today's special guest host, Janackeh Blackwell, and this is Commit Your Code, a show about software development, technology, and the developers that use it. Today, we have Pixel Perfect Developer and a Black Tech community builder talking about UX engineering. Later on, we will be joined by Carla Montano, an immigrant teacher turned software engineer.
Thank y'all so much for coming out. This is Commit Your Code, and I'm Danny Thompson, and I'm joined by my great, amazing special guest host today, Janackeh Blackwell. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I am joined with our guest today, Mr. Shashi Lo. Janackeh, why don't you introduce yourself today in case there are listeners that may not be familiar with who you are?
My name is Janackeh Blackwell. I am in Denver, Colorado. I am actually transitioned to tech a year ago from the mortgage industry. And I ended up starting my own in-person meetup group here in Denver called Black Tech Denver for underrepresented communities in tech. When I moved to Denver, I realized that there's just it didn't look like there was a lot of diversity in the tech scene here. And I wanted to bring, some of that here. And so I couldn't find a diverse group out there. So I started my own. And fast forward to now, it has grown and people have just reached out and they've really been just really open about it, and everybody wants to get involved, and it's just been an amazing thing. It started out as just an idea and it's grown to such a community, and so it's really exciting, and it's really kind of pivoted my own journey in tech so far. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here out in Denver.
Love it. And sir, Mr. Shashi Lo, why don't you introduce yourself in case there are people that may not be familiar with who you are?
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm Shashi Lo. I'm a senior UX engineer, and I have a lot of experience. I say that because it's crazy, my journey. I've worked for web development companies. I've worked for agencies. I've worked for software engineering companies, like the whole spectrum, like all the good, all the bad. And throughout all of that, I've taken all the good with me to the places I've been to, and that's led me to where I am today. I have a passion to help people break into the tech field. Growing up, or actually going through my career, I didn't have a true mentor, and I had to do everything myself, and it was very difficult. And so now it's one of my goals to help as many people as I can to be able to break in tech, to shortcut their route to success. And also to provide the tips and the tricks that I have that I've come to experience. A lot of coworkers that I have, when I show them the things that I am doing from the day to day, it's just normal to me. But to them, it's like, wow, like that is so cool. How did you do that? It's like, I don't know what I did. I'm just doing it. But it's like this lifelong experience that I've gained, and I've realized that, hey, you know what? I want to be able to share this knowledge with others. So that's kind of where my journey has led me.
Well, my first question to you is, and this was in your intro, it's been known that you are a pixel perfect developer. What does that even mean? And you also have other nicknames like a CSS magician. What is that all about?
Yes, I am a magician. Pixel perfect is pretty much taking a design and bringing it to life in code, right? You're bridging that gap between design and development, and being able to do that in a finite way. It's not easy. Like at the beginning of my career, I thought, oh yeah, I'll just take a design, bring it over, throw it up, no problem. But then you have to worry about responsiveness, and then you have to worry about like just the details of the design itself. And when you start working with designers that are very particular, which most of them are, you could miss something by 1 pixel, and then they're like, hey, yo, like you missed something. You got to go back and do this again. You're like, what are you talking about? Right. And so by being able to see all the details and understand that, it allows you to better implement their lifelong work, right? The designs that they do, they take so much time and effort into researching this and to coming up with a solution that when they give it to you, it's your job now to bring that to life. And if you don't do a good job, of course they're going to yell at you, because what people and customers and users are going to see is the implementation, not the design itself. So as it comes over, you have to do a good job at doing that. And I've seen some companies that don't do a good job at that. And you can see it in the details when you go to their website or their application. You can kind of see like things are a little bit off. They're a little bit just, they just don't match. The styles are just inconsistent. And that is what Pixel Perfect is being able to match the implementation to the design. That way, your company's branding and everything that you do, it stays cohesive. And the CSS magician, that's right. I'm known to be able to make some things go away with CSS and make some magic happen. So that's where that came from.
I know we want to talk about UX engineering and specifically. So why don't we talk about what UX engineering is, and then we can really deep dive into a lot of the technical aspects.
UX engineering is kind of a part of front end development. So when you think about front end development, there's a lot involved in it, right? There's the functional side of things, and then there is the design side of things. And that's where UX leans on, right? It leans more on the user side of things, whereas the functional side of things is where you're building more back-end things, or you're integrating with the API, you're working with data, you're building the components, all this stuff. But from the UX side of things, you're working along with design, you're working with accessibility, you're working to ensure that the interactions within the application or the website is as finite as it can be. So when you parse those things, those two roles apart, UX engineering becomes kind of a siloed and specialty where you are pretty much the bridge between that development and design. You're translating things to the designer, and you're translating to the other side, which is the developers. You're working hand in hand with both teams. And that alone is a difficult task, because being able to understand design is not an easy thing to pick up. Like designers, they are very particular, they're very creative, they have a different mindset. Whereas developers, they care about the code, they don't really care about design, they just want to get things done. So having both of those is a tough thing to kind of grasp and to understand. So that's where UX engineering comes in play. It's like half of a designer, half a developer, more so developer than not. But being able to communicate to both ends and understand pretty much the infrastructure of the application, and then understanding what design's wanting from their features, and working with both sides to ensure that we're going to be able to implement a solid solution for this feature or this application.
So, Sashi, you mentioned leaning on the side of the user, but when it comes to the needs of the business and those of the user, where do you find the priority and balance between the two?
That's a great question. It's always the user first, because users using the application and the website, right? Whatever you're building, users using it. So I always say customer obsession, because business has some requirements and some data and some KPIs and all these things they need to hit. But in the end, we always have to lean towards the user. How is the user going to use this? How are they going to interact with this? If we build this, is it even useful for the user? Even if business says, hey, we need this thing because it's going to help us with conversions. Well, okay, that's totally fine. But how is it going to help the user? If they don't use it, you're not going to get any conversions. So it's very difficult to kind of have that balance. But I'd say lean more towards the user, because the user is going to tell you what they're looking for, what they want, opposed to business, where if they're trying to push their objective, the feature is probably going to fail, because users are what's going to draw the attention to the feature itself.
So that's interesting, because you say that you're really leaning on the side of the user here. You're even mentioning that you are more focused on the user's need versus perhaps like the business needs. How are you accurately identifying what the user need even is?
Yeah, I think a good way to do that is through user testing and user research. Even if you kind of work with business and they're like, hey, you know what? We really want this feature. We really want it this way. But you kind of know yourself, like, well, the user doesn't want it that way. That's where user testing and user research comes in play, where you take that and you can put it into user focus, right? Where they can kind of feel it out before you build it out. Because then this way, the user can kind of go through some variations to kind of see how they feel about it. And by doing that, then all sides will understand, okay, users are telling us that this is useful or this is not useful. And I think that is a key piece to that, because we can we always think we know how to build something, but that's only for us, right? We're not thinking about the user that's coming on to actually use this feature and to actually understand it. And sometimes we're so naive and ignorant to think like, no, it should be like this. But it's like, wait, actually, it's not for us. It's for the user. We need to understand that. And another way to do it is if it's already in the works of the application or the website, is to use A/B testing to implement the A/B testing, because then you can have different variations of this implementation, and through that A/B testing, the statistics will tell you which one performs better. And when you do that, then you kind of know, okay, B is performing 75% better than A, so that is our solution. That's what we're going to go with, because the users are telling us that this is better, and that's a key piece as well.
You know, when it comes to like A/B testing in general, the first time that I was introduced to it, I was like, "This is brilliant!" Like, I didn't know this really existed. But like, how do you find when it comes to A/B testing? Like, is there like a certain mathematical approach to saying, "Hey, we're going to convert like 5% of our traffic as a test," or are you using a different kind of number to really get a sense of? Because maybe 5%, maybe it's just the wrong 5% that lands on it,
Mhm.
right? Like, how do you know
Mhm.
you're really getting a centralized portion of the user audience that would be identifiable as, "Hey, this really worked," or maybe this didn't work?
The A/B testing I've done in the past is kind of a 50-50 split. And you're right. It's like it's very difficult
Hmm.
because you don't know what half is using B versus A. And so that's why the test that you put out there, it has to last a little bit longer, right? You put it in chunks. Let's say we do it for a whole month. And so for the first 2 weeks, we say this half of the world is going to use A and this half of the world is going to use B. And then we flip it. This half of the world is going to use B, and this one's going to use A. And by doing that, you kind of have a better understanding of how you did your A/B testing. It's never going to be perfect, right? It's never going to be there, but it gives you at least an inclination of what's going to perform better than the other. Sometimes you'll get tests that are very close to each other, and then you need to do another test because didn't help. But sometimes when you do a test, it's like 25%, 75%, and you're like, okay, that is a clear indication that this one's going to be better. And that's kind of how I've been used to doing A/B testing.
So going back to user testing, what do you find most difficult about user testing, and how much does that factor into the overall experience choices that you have to make?
Yeah, I feel like user testing is great, but also it doesn't give you all the answers, because the whoever you use for user testing may not be the user that's using it, and it could be as well. And so you can never make everybody happy, right? Like you're never going to get that 100% coverage. And that's the downfall, is you're going to put the user testing out there. Sometimes I've done it where we do internal testing with our own employees, and that's fine. And then sometimes we'll grab some of our clients to come in and kind of do it. And then I've done ones where we crowdsource people too, by putting ads out there and bring people into a user research center and then doing tests there randomly. And that one's great, but then also random, right? But then that's also good too, because depending on the product and the feature you do, that might be the right test. And, but again, you're never going to make everybody happy. And there's no way to do that. That's why these studies are like a good inclination of what direction may work. And in the end, that kind of sways business and the team to choose whatever results come out of there. But if the team kind of feels strongly about a certain feature and the numbers came out just okay, they may still go forward with that route, just because you just can't cover everybody. But the great thing is, after that, you put analytics in, you put like Newegg right on top, right? Heat mapping in. You get analytics, you get data. You can then for sure find out, okay, are users actually using this feature? Are they going down to it? I love Crazy Egg and those heat maps, because they kind of show you where the user's going as they scroll, where they're clicking, where the mouse is at. And through that, it has really revamped how the companies I work with redevelop their websites and redevelop the home pages, because we're trying to get the most important things at the top, and as well as key features that users are actually clicking on, using, and all that. And then we find that the things that we took a long time building, if nobody's using it, it's like, yo, let's take it out. This is wasting space and performance is taking a hit. Let's take this out. Our analytics are telling us that only 5% of people are getting here. Yeah, that's not good enough. Let's move it out. Let's throw this on another page or make our own page for it. That way we still have the content, but we don't need to have this on the homepage.
You just mentioned analytics, so it kind of makes me wonder about something. Like, we've mentioned so much about testing and getting data to represent something. Has there ever been a time where the analytics maybe pulled you in a direction where you definitely didn't think it was going, or maybe it created doubt in an approach where you thought XYZ was going to be very successful? Now you're like, whoa, this totally isn't successful at all, and we need to readjust our approach.
Yeah, I am not happy you asked that question, because I have a really good one. I hate carousels. Okay, image carousels, tab carousels, all of that. I used to love them because I was like, oh, I'm gonna jam all like 5 sections together, and then it's gonna rotate and all this stuff. The user's gonna go through it. Well, through user testing, they don't do that. They just skip it. It's like, why would I want to click on it? All that stuff. So at one company, my CMO was like, hey, we're gonna put a carousel, and I'm like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, all right, let's put it on there and let's look at the analytics and see how it does. Well, that feature was the best thing on the homepage. It was on the hero and people were clicking on it. We had great numbers, and I was like, wow, I was completely wrong with this. I have to revisit this. There is a use case for this, because this the company that I was at was data driven. And so by having a lot of content and good data on there, users are using it. They weren't scrolling down anymore, and I was very surprised. But that's where like all this analytics and all this heat mapping comes in play. Is that's going to show you where the users are actually going, what they're actually doing. And sometimes we're wrong, and that's okay. And once we learn that, then we refine it, we make it better. So what happened was we made that carousel look better. We put more data in there, and it's still performing awesome.
I find that interesting because I'm on a similar boat with you. Like, I don't like carousels, and I think it really does depend on the user that's coming through there, because if it's a data-driven user that's looking for those metrics, it kind of makes sense that they would go through that. But for example, if you had, let's say, I don't know, a car dealership website, and your home banner was a carousel, you might not have too many people looking through it unless they clicked on a vehicle and they were looking for different angles of that specific vehicle. Again, the use case matters in that regard. So that's definitely interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, just being completely honest. So there you go. Like, I think that matters. So I guess like one specific question that I have now is, with all the teams that you've led, and I know you've worked with so many amazing people. Like, what has been something that you've looked at and seen people throughout their career, whether it's beginner or senior or even team lead? What was like a specific characteristic set of skills that you saw them have that really made them excel within that role?
One skill that I can say that stands out of everything is being a team player. Being able to understand that we're a team, and whatever task that's given to you, you're going to take it. You're not going to complain about it. You're going to do it, and you're going to move forward with it. It's not that you're always going to get like the bottom of the totem pole or anything. It's just that at this particular time, we just need you to do this piece. That's, it's not fun, but it's needed to be done. But eventually you'll get something that's good. And those people, I say, are the best to work with, because we have an understanding that, we're going to help each other out. Like, sometimes I may get the worst, feature and have to do it, and they get the best. But then eventually we help each other out anyways. We have to do code reviews. We're going to have to do this and that, and to understand that. And I think that by being a good team player, like, it also shows well towards the company, and they start to understand that, hey, this person, we can rely on them. It's not that they're going to walk all over you. Obviously, don't let them do that. But they know that they can trust you when they give you a task. Like if it's an overnighter or something, or a 2-day task, they know that if they give it to you, you're gonna excel at it, and you're gonna communicate and get it done. And I think that's the key piece too. And then also that is by being a team player, it builds that culture for the team, right? Like the team culture is important. Understanding that we're all in this together. I always use the phrase of, like we are only as great as our weakest link. And so let's raise the weakest link to be at the level that we are. That way we can all move together. Because if one person is moving too fast, one person is moving too slow, it doesn't matter. We're all going to come together and figure this out anyways, in the end of the day. So by having a good solid team and people that just understand that the work that you have, it may not be fun sometimes, but it's needed. And in the end, you're going to get some good stuff as well.
Janackeh, is there any, like, I don't have another question, but is there anything that you'd want to ask or go off of or comment on?
I just think that was very informative. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shashi, honestly, thank you. I have a ton of respect for not just UX individuals, but UI as well. Like, I can't match the color scheme of my clothes, much less the color scheme of a website. And so, like right now, like my background is blue and my shirt is brown. I don't even know if that goes together, but I'm trying to make it work. But honestly, super. Not only am I excited to see that you focus so much on the user side of things, but I know you're developing some really great features and you're obviously working on some really great projects. So it kind of just shows the empathy that you're bringing into the role. And I think that's fantastic. So always on the lookout for stuff like that. Is there anything that you want to share, plug, anything that you're working on now that people should be aware of?
Yeah. So I am finally trying to start my YouTube channel and build developer content. My focus is on UX engineering. I want to put out content out there where it focuses on the user, it focuses on design side of things, and it focuses on being the developer that takes that design and implements it and makes it perfect. And then also on the flip side of that, like I said at the beginning, was I love helping people. I want to create developer content that's like for beginners as well. There are some certain topics and things that I don't see many out there, and I want to bring that to the forefront. That way, beginners, when they come on, they're not surprised by these little details like debugging, like time boxing, being able to understand process or how to code review, or how to take in advice, or how to even like uh, go to a network, right? Things like that, where it's these little skills and little details that nobody really talks about. Some people, say it out loud. Some people try to help you out and all that stuff. But I'm hoping that the content that I provide will help others, definitely the beginners, but also helping those middle level developers excel to become seniors.
Shashi Lo, thank you so much for being on here. Absolute pleasure. I felt like I learned a ton. I definitely look forward to knowing you in the future and watching your career continue to blossom and grow. And I look forward to the YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this. It was a pleasure.
Welcome to the show, Carla Montano, an immigrant teacher turned software engineer.
Carla, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on here. And honestly, to like learn more, just seeing your journey has been incredible. And I thought you could share a ton of light and information for a lot of people. But before we even get started, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of a little bit of background before we kind of dig in more?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As you say, I'm an immigrant. I'm from Venezuela. I moved to the US about 9 years ago. I used to be a teacher in Venezuela. I also taught here in the US. And I changed careers about 2 years ago to software engineer. I'm a software engineer at Green Mountain Technology. It's a shipping management company. It's a local company in Memphis. And it's been a journey. It's been exciting, and I have learned a lot so far.
One of the first questions I ask pretty much everybody, It's one of my favorite questions to ask because I know exactly what this was for me, and I love hearing about it. And so the first question I always ask is, what was the first I don't know what's going on here moment for you? Like when you first started your first job in tech as a software developer, like what was that first time where like, whoa, I was not expecting this. I need to figure this out. What was that for you?
Well, there were too many moments like that. But the first moment was during onboarding when, I was expecting to start seeing some code or something like that. And I got a bunch of business videos and I was like, what's going on here? A lot of diagrams and too many things. And I was like, okay, what is this? That was the first.
When you started your new role, like when you were, just beginning, what new technologies and tools were you introduced to?
Well, I was introduced to TypeScript, um, React testing library, yes, Movex, and C Sharp. Um, when I started, I didn't know anything about testing. Before, I was kind of scared of TypeScript. And when I was there, okay, yes, I have to learn it. So, and the funny thing is that after I got to learn more about TypeScript, that helped me a lot, more than I could think of. I understand better JavaScript because of TypeScript. So that was really, really, really good for me. And about tools, Git Kraken to manage our Git stuff, Bitbuckets, Jira, Confluence, and Starbucks for our, company specific UI components.
It's funny that I even said this about when I joined my current company now, that I felt like I was able to understand my code base a lot quicker because of TypeScript. Like it was so much easier to follow a lot of information. I knew exactly what was going on. The readability increased tremendously for me. So it's interesting to hear that. And it was also interesting to see, like you mentioned, C Sharp specifically. Like, were you not familiar with backend when you got the role? Was that something that you had to learn, or did you learn something else?
That's the funny part because when I was in my during the process, my job interview process, I was finishing my boot camp. I was in the last month of my boot camp, and the last month was back end. And I was like, okay, do I focus on the boot camp or in the application? I had to build an application, a full stack application. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it. I put everything on that application. And that was kind of my first full experience with full stack. So it was a good experience, and I'm so glad it paid off.
What processes did you find different in tech that you may not have known about when you were, a teacher previously?
A lot of different processes. I will say that the main process was agile development, the agile methodologies. um, in education, we have a full year. It's different when you have a plan for the full year than when you are planning for a sprint. That is what we do now. So that was the first process that I learned, and I liked it.
What's funny is that was also a big struggle for me when I first got into the role. And I remember for my very first job, I distinctly remember that my onboarding meeting was 4 hours after I got into the building. I didn't have any access rights yet, so I couldn't even start my laptop to log in or anything like that. And 1.5 hours after being there, we had a meeting, and my boss said, hey, this is an optional meeting only for a couple people, but I'll bring you in, just kind of introduce you to some new folks on the team that you may not know yet and stuff like that. It was a sprint plan. It was a refinement meeting for certain items that were going to be in the actual refinement coming up. So they were like refining for the refinement. And I remember I was completely lost. I had no clue what a refinement was. I had no clue what Jira was. I didn't know anything that was happening. And I remember 10 minutes into the meeting, they said that they were going to come up with a couple sizes for a ticket to share with other developers. And so my manager at the time says, Danny, so do you know how to t-shirt size a ticket? I was like, I don't know what you just said. None of that made sense to me. Like, what do you mean t-shirt size? What do we 2XL? I don't know what we're talking about here. So I'll give it a 2XL. He's like, no, Danny. And so he started breaking it down. He's like, obviously this is not something you're familiar with. I was like, we've never done this in a gas station. So no, I don't know anything about what we're talking about right now. That whole meeting was a blur. I remember walking out of there saying, I don't know what any of this is, but I'm big on writing stuff down. So I literally took 5 pages of notes and I just started researching all of it when I got back to my desk. Like, okay, I need to start understanding this concept and this and this. I to this day, like, there's still parts of Agile that are interesting and different and something that I get exposed to. And every company has different ways that they handle their Agile sizes and methods and uses. But it's definitely interesting, especially your first time in, coming from a different field, like that's completely brand new. So I find that interesting. But now that kind of brings me into a different area of question. Like you mentioned how there's all these new technologies, like you didn't know C#, you didn't know TypeScript, you didn't know any of this stuff. And even now on top of that, you're learning like new processes like Agile and how to structure yourself on these teams. So it now brings me to the question of, how do you even get comfortable with your code base?
Well, I will say that my teammates were a huge, huge part of me getting used to it. For me, um, getting into this new position, it took a lot of challenges, or I had a lot of challenges, not only by changing careers, but because of the language barrier, the all the different aspects. So when I got to this job, a part of me was like, it's so overwhelmed that I felt like I forgot everything. I was like, state, what is that? So it was really challenging for me in that sense. So one thing that helped me a lot was pair programming. I had a good team member that he helped me a lot. He took the time to work with me and explain, this is weird because this is TypeScript, and this is what we're doing here. And thank a lot to my teammates in that part. And they they helped me a lot. And also during code reviews were um, important whenever a mere request. And okay, what is going on here? What did they just run? It was also helpful to pay attention to that, even when I didn't understand what was going on, but just taking a look at that. Another part, I will say, taking the time to learn what the application was. Uh, what what is this application? Who is using this application? And all of that. Okay, let me take a look at this. And that was another big part.
Can you talk about a particular problem that you've solved in the past and how you went about approaching it?
Oh gosh, that is the hardest question. So many problems. I never know which problem to talk about. When I was just 6 months in, I was working in a rewrite, and we were uh, integrating two apps in one. So the rewrite was that single app that had things from both. We were working in the first part first. one of the apps first. And then we had some changes in the team. And for a moment, I was on my own working on this app. My project manager said, okay, this is the only ticket that we have left. And it was integrating the other app to this one. And I was like, okay, so what do we have for that? And she was like, well, we need to plan this. And I was like, yes, we need to plan this. So it took, some collaboration, a lot of collaboration with the product owner, with ops in the account managers, um, to kind of find that sweet place in integrating this new application without doing too many changes to the users, because it was a rewrite. So it the requirement was like it needs to be exactly the same as the old app. So yes, the good thing for this is that I felt my voice heard during this process, providing feedback. Well, I don't think there might be a better idea of doing this for the users. And they were like, okay, yes, that sounds good. Let's try that. And that help us, to move and solve that problem.
It comes to one of my favorite questions to ask, right? Like, you've been in this industry now for a little while, you've experienced a lot of things, you've learned a lot of things. What do you know now that you wish you knew before you accepted your first job in tech?
Continuous integration in development. I will add to that, which I did before, not as much as what I knew before, but I wish that I did more projects in groups before getting to this role. Yes, I did before some little projects with two teammates and just a branch in GitHub, and it was totally different than a huge project with 5, 6 team members and all the different branches and deploy here and all of that.
The last question I have for you here is, what would be like one piece of advice that you're giving to somebody who just got hired today and they're about to start working in the company tomorrow? What would be your first couple pieces of advice to them?
Something that I did that worked for me: try to do things outside of work that, of course, are related to tech or what you are learning, uh, but apply it outside. And that will give you like an advantage of feeling better, feeling comfortable at your new job. For example, one thing that I did was to form a small group of teachers that were trying to transition. We implemented like the whole agile thing. We did stand-ups, we did planning, we did all those things uh, outside of the job. So when I was at work, I felt more confident with all the different processes. In that group, we did like code reviews or teaching something, because from the teachers, I was the only one that had transitioned in at that time. So I was like, okay, this is how we do it at work. And we were trying to, find better ways. So that helped a lot in getting more confidence.
And I'm sure Janackeh can even attest to this as well, but I'm a very firm believer that you are a byproduct of people that you choose to keep around you. Like, you can't choose who your family is, but you can absolutely choose the people you surround yourself with and the influences that you're going to have around you. And so by you surrounding yourself with teachers that are trying to transition and learn to code, those are some really positive influences that are going to keep you on that path, and you're going to learn, grow, and do really, really well. That's why I love meetups and communities like that. And I mean, Janackeh, like, that's like, how do you feel about that? Just out of curiosity.
Oh yeah, I think that it's amazing to like give people that, extra help up, cuz honestly, with people who have never worked in this industry and you're trying to transition, you have no clue what like the day-to-day work is like. So to be able to like be working on a project with somebody who's actually like has a job, like somebody who went through boot camps and somebody, who was trying to get like their first developer job, the most elusive part is like what it's actually like, because we all know that it's not the day in the life of videos that you see on TikTok where somebody's like drinking coffee all day and like basically taking a break all day. Like we know that that's definitely not what it's like to be a software engineer. So I think that it's amazing that you were working with a group of people that, kind of in that in between where it's what you used to do, what you're currently doing, and it's kind of like the bridge between. That's amazing.
Yeah, I always try to tell folks, like, even I've never worked at a company so far where they're like, yeah, just take whatever you want and do all this. Like, there's no background music when I'm writing code at work. Like, it's just, there's no cinema photographer in the corner. Like, picture me, I'm working hard late at night, but they see the struggle. None of that happens. So, yeah, definitely the realism was missing when I was trying to break in and trying to get a better idea. But going to meetups and even meeting devs that were already there kind of gave me like some very realistic expectations as I was trying to transition in. The last thing I ask is like, do either one of y'all have anything that you want to plug, anything you want to share, anything that you're working on that you're excited about?
I definitely just always plugging Black Tech Denver because that's my baby now. So if anybody is listening to this or watching this in the Denver area, or if you know anybody who's in the Denver area, please let them know about Black Tech Denver. They can go to blacktechdenver.org to find out about our events and to see pictures. You can kind of get a feel of what it's like to come to our events. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We have a meetup with some tech recruiters actually next weekend, and we're actually going to be hosting an event this year with Denver Startup Week. So that will be the week of September 18th through 22nd. So yeah, just a lot of really awesome stuff coming up, and the group just continues to grow, and we love it.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Janackeh. I'd love to see it. Anything you want to share, Carla, before we end this?
I am in the process of starting my YouTube channel. That has been a huge challenge for me. Every year I say I'm going to do it this year, but I'm starting slowly, but I'm putting some videos in from tutorials or things that I'm working on, or just demos, things like that. So my idea is to start this YouTube channel and help as many people as I can with my experience as an immigrant, as a teacher, as a career changer, um, all of that. And yeah, I would love to connect with more people.
I say go for it, do it. You never know who you may end up helping. Don't be discouraged early on if some of the views aren't necessarily where you wanted to be. I always tell people this. It took me 65 videos before I had my first video that had over 1,000 views. It took me a long time to finally figure out what made it at least not even a phenomenal video, but a decent video. What got people interested, what kept them around. It took me a long time to figure that out. Just keep having fun with it. And if you help one person, it was worth the video as far as I'm concerned. So it doesn't necessarily matter about the views. It just matters about what you're doing, and just stay consistent. And I'm pretty sure you'll find exactly what you want out of it. Carla Montano, thank you so much for being a part of this. Janackeh Blackwell, thank you so much for being my special co-host today. And as always, like I always say, if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, you absolutely got this. And I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.